We had made it halfway through the deployment when I realized that I wasn't the same Casey from 6 months ago. It had been 3.5 months of chaos, a dark blur with wet red flashes bursting when least expected. We had all walked through streets littered with IEDs and soccer fields where children threw grenades. Snipers kept our movements honest, and we moved from place to place with the deliberate violence of action. Even our gait was affected by the dark shroud under which we lived. We walked more like primitive war chimps than Homo sapiens, hunched over and weary. And though we were tired, we walked on the balls of our feet like the predatory creatures we had become. I had lost friends, some dead, some forever changed. I had witnessed the godlike power of an IED up close. Not as close as many, but close enough to feel the brimstone shockwave pass through my body. Close enough to see the Old Testament carnage of military-grade explosives. And honestly, I never felt better. Maybe that should have been my first warning, that I was actually enjoying myself. Whew. Heavy. Another excerpt from my dear friend and brother Casey Tellison's book, Freaks of a Feather. Available from Latop Press, available on Amazon. Some of you have already gotten your copy. If you haven't, what the fuck are you waiting on? Plan to have them on next week. Let's keep our fingers crossed for that one. In the meantime, between time, boys and girls, the opinions expressed by the Reverend are his own and no one else's on the planet. Not friends, not foes, not supporters, not detractors, and certainly not employers. They've been adjudicated thought crime in all jurisdictions. Consider yourself warned. They're coming from the heart. They're guided by the mind. They're guaranteed to choke you with the truth cock. Once again, boys and girls, it is time for the Sunday sermon. Appreciate your patience, man. Everybody who hung out and waited. It has been a banner fucking day. We'll get into all that right here in a minute. Everybody in for the drum roll. Where's my fire? All right. Downstairs, second level of 3 here at the Bart Bunker. I know they're letting you know how many levels we got. It's kind of an OPSEC violation, but, you know, if you're really coming for it that hard, you've already done your homework. So I'm not giving away anything that people with malicious intent hadn't already figured out a long time ago. In any case, here we are, man, once again with the opening salvo of music from the band Red Desert. Out of the smoldering ruins of Minneapolis, Minnesota. The name of the track is Older, No Wiser, because every week I get a little bit older, and every week you guys get to decide if I've gotten any wiser. Got an interesting program online. We're getting started a little bit late today. I really apologize for that. He does, man. He does really look like that distinguished 1900s gentleman, doesn't he? Oh, my God. Tax-free weekend for Emily. Yeah, man, I hate like hell he had to work retail through all of that. But, hey, man, we got the mighty Bonesai on board. We got Brother James Pearson on board. Emmy's here. Joel just jumping in on YouTube. I'll give you an update on my social media lockdown right now. Things are getting pretty entertaining. Joey, the Sultan of Sarcasm, jumping in. Thanks, guys. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Held a lot of. First, we had some production issues here with the equipment, and then right when we were getting that ironed out, as soon as my buddy Moses. And first of all, thank you again, Moses, for holding it down for me while I'm once again on a 30-day Facebook ban show. My man Moses Baxter, Mo Baxter. You'll find him on Facebook if you haven't already friended him, man. Give him a shout. But he holds it down for me every time I wind up in Zuckerberg Penitentiary, Zuckerberg Correctional Institute. And once again, I have caught that, and here in a little bit, when we get to the actual meat of this thing, we're going to cut it a little bit short today. I'm going to cover the important talking points and everything. I'm going to cut it short because I'm trying to be respectful of y'all's time, getting started late and everything like we are. I really hate that like hell. Sorry about that. But yeah, we were having some difficulties with the equipment, and right when we finally got that ironed out, we had a power outage here. I'm not sure what caused it. We're not, you know, this place is a lot more sensitive to inclement weather of a different sort. We can handle snowstorms, but for some reason, rain just creates idiocy on the roads. And I think somebody slammed into a transformer. I'm not exactly sure. I can't be too sure about that. But anyway, in any case, power went down. And that was just after my boy Moses had passed along the announcement that we were going to be running an hour late anyway. So we're about an hour and 12 minutes late. I'll just jump right into it, man. I don't want to hold you guys up any more than is necessary. 3 shout outs I want to give. First of all, we've already seen this one seen this one. This is Casey Tellison, one of the Tellison brothers, and I'll be giving them both a shout out here, but I wanted to give Casey one in particular. This book is one of the most riveting fucking reads, and I'm not easily impressed. The man is just such a gifted writer, and he's got such a skill for taking you on that little walk, taking you by the hand and walking you down that inner landscape that is just the stuff of fucking horror. This book began as therapy for him. We're trying to get things arranged to where we can get him on next week for the sermon, and he'll be my first official guest on the sermon. We'll do a little interview and give you a little bit better insight as to Casey and what makes him tick. And I'll let him put it in his own words. But if you want a taste of it in his own words, right off the bat, now's the time. You can jump up and you can pick up that book. Again, Freaks of a Feather is the name of this awesome piece of literature. A Marine Grunt's memoir. It's published by Latop Press out of right here in Spokane, Washington. Some of you have already picked it up and have been nice enough to drop reviews on either the fan page or, maybe you've sent emails to him directly. Casey, outside of being a phenomenal author, is half of the Viking brothers, the Tellison brothers, my Viking brothers from here in the Northwest, from here in the Spoke, the only legit barbecue in the inland Northwest, Nordic Smoke Barbecue. Both of these guys are fucking phenomenal, and I'm very, very proud to have them as my friends. I also got to give a shout out to my buddy Roman and Roxy and Allie and the bevy of beautiful women over at Opium Tales. You can check them out at opiumtales.com. They are the erotic pinups and portraits people. And check out Roman's testosterone-driven commentary. You will dig it, I guarantee. So, let's see. Let's bounce this off one more time before we jump into things. Well, actually, let's just jump into things with one of our favorite segments, Ryan's Rabbit Hole. That is correct. Ryan's Rabbit Hole. Let's give him a little sound of applause here. There we go. There we go. Ryan's Rabbit Hole. This week, we are definitely going with Viva Referentia Obscura. Well, at least to most people. I was right when he suggested this, when he forwarded me 2 suggestions for the rabbit hole this week, and this was the first one, and I was all about it. Gilles. He was a contemporary and fought alongside Joan of Arc. He showed himself to be a phenomenal soldier in the 100 Years' War, if you guys are familiar of that. But no man is so noble that he is without his demons, shall we say. While he conducted himself admirably as a soldier, and while people would look at his efforts alongside Joan of Arc as something meriting a place in history accorded to a good soldier, Gilles had a bit of a dark side, and murder was sort of a recreational hobby for the man. Some of these were they dated as far back as his childhood. And when the circumstances came out, it was quite the stuff of scandal. I'm going to spell this for you. It's Gilles, little d-e, Rais. One of the articles that I pulled up about this when I was just doing a little recap, Encyclopedia Britannica actually described him as potentially history's first serial killer. Now, certainly he wasn't. I'm sure that the phenomenon now known as serial killer, predates history. But when you have a figure of his magnitude, again, who fought alongside Joan of Arc at the Siege of Orleans, it's pretty heavy. Some of the stuff that this guy did. He was eventually tortured and admitted to some of the most sadistic acts. I'm gonna let you go down that rabbit hole on your own. But some of the acts of sadism of which this man proved himself capable were the stuff of fucking nightmares, man. I'm just going to let you go down that rabbit hole yourself. But anyway, that is going to be Ryan's rabbit hole for the week. Gilles de Rais. So I spelled it out for you. I pronounced it the best that I could because I really don't accommodate the French with the nasal nature of their pronunciation. They can eat a fat sack of dicks. But yeah, contemporary of Joan of Arc and bloodthirsty killer, child murderer, abusive fucking scumbag of the highest goddamn order. You'll definitely want to dig into that. So that's going to be Ryan's rabbit hole. And I'm going to do a little sidebar rabbit hole here because my first introduction to Gilles de Rais came as a result of there was an independent publisher that put out a series of books called The Big Books. The Big Book of Death, the Big Book of Freaks, the Big Book of Vice, the Big Book of Little Criminals. There was a whole series of these big books, and he was one of the obscure historical figures. I was very young when very young compared to now, much younger when I started reading these books, but there was a whole chapter in it on this guy. And I was like, wow, that is crazy. These were and when I first picked this up, this was like the early 90s, like the earliest days of like BBS and like the early incarnations of the internet. So like most of the stuff that I had to do still required going to a library and flipping through a card catalog and tracking down shelf after shelf of books to find this stuff. Fortunately, you guys don't have to go through that kind of effort. You guys can just get the spelling correct and go down a little Google rabbit hole and find that out for yourself. Oh my God, Ryan, I fucking love you, man. I absolutely love you. All right, so let's jump into this. It can't be sadism if actually it can by it can be as a phenomenon. Are we really going to dick around about whether or not we can call it sadism if it doesn't predate Desaad? Anyway, Joel, I'm not going to go down that hole with you. But anyway, Gilles de Rais, check it out. That is going to be Ryan's rabbit hole for this week. Here are some this is the main thing that I wanted to cover. And again, we're gonna cut it a bit short today because I'm trying to be respectful of y'all's time and we are getting started way fucking late. As you have seen, Mr. Moses Baxter, my good friend over in the Montana hinterlands, is covering for me. By the way, he speaks very highly of Starlink. He really didn't have the greatest of internet connections. He had to go down to a town laundromat in the unidentified town that he lives close to be able to get any kind of internet signal to post to Facebook or anything like that. So he's been very patient with me. Thank you again, Moses, for your patience. But yeah, he speaks very highly of Elon Musk's Starlink. He's got an early incarnation of that, and he's been posting. But anyway, you notice that he has made an appearance again. I have been banned for another 30 days from Facebook for posting a quote that I'm going to hit here because of the nature of the things that are going on. A lot of the things that were bothering me about the overwhelming prevalence of the successful employment of propaganda. I really don't know where to begin on this because we're so far and so deep into it at this point. I have never seen in my entire life the American populace so thoroughly propagandized and at the same time so painfully unaware that they have been propagandized, which is what led me to post the quote, which resulted in a 30-day ban. And I'll go you one better, guys. Let's go ahead and let you know, brace yourself. Not only have they banned me from Facebook for, yes, indeed I do. Not only did they ban me from Facebook for 30 days, but they have banned me from Facebook Live for 60 days. That is what I am current. And again, I was able to successfully contest one earlier attempt this week to get me a 30-day ban. I was able to contest that. And I guess twice in 1 week was too much to hope for. But yeah, 30-day ban and a 60-day ban from going live. So if you guys want to check out the sermon, it's going to have to either be on Twitter or here on YouTube, pretty much for the duration. And in fact, Moses messaged me earlier and said that he was having difficulty posting from his phone. Apparently he can post from his laptop, but they are not letting him post from his phone. So his posts might be few and far between as well. Again, the reason that I posted the quote that got me banned, I have seen propaganda at work. And let me give you a little background. When I was in 6th grade, definitely another time, I know, go ahead and throw out the old guy jokes. It's easy. I was in 6th grade in rural North Carolina, not exactly known for being a hotbed of critical thinking, to say the least. And yet, in 6th grade, we had a little 3-week mini course. It was basically a little mini course to teach critical thinking skills. It started with advertising and how advertising played to your emotions rather than your intellect, the way that it framed specific things to appeal to your emotions rather than your intellect. And then it moved on into actual propaganda as utilized by political parties, particularly authoritarian political parties throughout history. And back then, they highlighted not just fascism, but also communism. You couldn't do that in today's political climate. You could not disparage the glorious successes of all communist regimes, blah, blah, blah. You couldn't speak ill of it. But back then we knew it was the days of Soviet Russia, the evil empire, as they were called by our dearly departed President Reagan. We knew what the fuck we were dealing with. We didn't have any illusions about it. And so the examples that we were given of propaganda and how it affected people and the sinister nature of it, the way that it tricked people. It basically, I mean, you know, through the understanding of a middle school kid, my teacher was able to break it down in a way that I could understand, maybe not the full complexity of it, but at least the trickery of it, the mind games that were being played, and was made aware at that young age that there are people out there with malicious intent that will lie to you without really lying to you. Some of whom have malicious intent, some of whom more or less just want to sell you something. That's what it started with. This is how advertisers sell you things. The plain folks appeal, the you know, sympathy, whatever, any of these things. That was the angle.
that they took in the beginning, and they made a slow, gradual transition over this little 3-week mini course into the way that governments, authoritarian governments, influence people's thoughts through the same basic methods. The formula is pretty much universal. It always has been. This is why advertising is so successful. This is why propaganda, when properly utilized, has always been so very successful. It's frightening on a conceptual level, even when we were being told about it back then. This is how the German with the funny mustache was able to trick Germany's most culturally developed, culturally evolved, intellectually sound population, easily, far and away above any other. Germany was far and above all of Europe with regard to being a cultured nation. And yet, a single man with a funny mustache and his creepy little friend with the limp were able to shape the opinion of a whole nation of people. There was a basis in truth to some of it, as there normally is in any successful propaganda. You have to speak to some fundamental truth that people can relate to. But in any case, we were told, and it was terrifying conceptually looking at it at that age, how the German with the funny mustache and his creepy buddy with the limp were able to sway the opinions of the entire nation of Germany. But moreover, we were taught, and again, we were realizing this on a conceptual level, how communism, which again, keep in mind, this was before the end of the Cold War, how sinister communism was in its ability to persuade entire nations, entire peoples, entire cultures, and sell them on an ideology that was fundamentally bankrupt, that was provably a failure. And yet have people willing to defend it with their very lives. I pulled up a few quotes about propaganda just as a background, and on this list was the quote that I posted earlier that got me banned for 30 days. I'll use that one last. Again, with the class that we were taught, the critical thinking skills class, we started with advertising. Here's a good quote on that from Gilles and O'Donnell. If consumers are aware that they are being propagandized, the choice to accept or reject the message is theirs alone. Nice dodge. The kind of dodge you would expect from people who are involved in advertising and public relations. It's almost like, well, we're flat out telling them that we're lying to them and we're trying to manipulating and buying something, but really the choice is theirs. No, it isn't. Even conceding that, the thought that you would even want the choice to be theirs is laughably absurd, especially once one considers the amount of, especially when one considers the amount of money and resources that advertising and PR firms have thrown into things like subliminal advertising. Finding, they hire and they pay really ridiculous money to entire departments full of psychologists to find better ways to trick you. I mean, that's really what it comes down to create insecurities in your head that should not exist so they can fill that gap with their product And governments are really no different. Just substitute the word product for policy, and you'll find that the methodology is essentially the same. A couple more quotes. Good propaganda must keep well ahead of actual political events. It must act as a pacemaker to policy and mold public opinion without appearing to do so. General Erich Ludendorff, 1865 to 1937. Good propaganda must keep well ahead of actual political events. It must act as a pacemaker to policy and mold public opinion without appearing to do so. Does any of that sound vaguely familiar? We have to create the fear before we can influence the policy. I'll give you a couple of examples, again, dating back to my teenage years. When the crack epidemic first broke, there was a young basketball player from the ACC, Atlantic Coast Conference. That was where I grew up in the Carolinas. That was the thing. He was a young basketball player, with a college athlete named Len Bias. And Len Bias died of a crack cocaine overdose. We had heard about this new epidemic of crack cocaine. It had been gaining traction in the media and was played over and over and over again. And then after Len Bias, now this is an example, sort of the opposite phenomenon of what happens when propaganda trails policy, but then eventually comes full circle and influences policy. Len Bias died of a crack cocaine overdose. And it was non-stop, the tragedy. He could have been one of the NBA greats. He could have been one of the greatest of all time. And here he is, struck down in the prime of his life by this evil menace of crack cocaine, crack cocaine, crack cocaine, crack cocaine, crack cocaine, crack cocaine. 24/7, nothing but how crack cocaine is public enemy number one. And the single most important thing that we needed to be afraid of. Dan Rather telling us every goddamn night how we needed to be afraid of cocaine, crack cocaine in particular. And lo and behold, they went and did a Gallup and a Rasmussen poll after several weeks of nonstop coverage of this, asking Americans what they felt the biggest threat to public safety was and what the number one thing was that the government needed to address. And lo and behold, miracle of miracles, it was crack cocaine. Wow. What was that about it being a pacemaker to policy, used to mold public opinion without appearing to do so? And again, because I had that little mini course when I was in 6th grade, it was readily apparent to me what was going on here. I've always been a bit of a critical thinker. I kind of pride myself on that, especially nowadays when it's practically a fucking superpower. It was troubling to me how easily people went along with this. It's like, look, I get it. Realistically, it's an issue, not in your fucking neighborhood. But then, of course, came all of the policies that followed behind that stripped away civil liberties and, started, because that's where a lot of the loss of our civil liberties began, was with the war on drugs. Even though I lean right, I do not exonerate conservatives for what they have done. I don't exonerate anybody for what they've done with regard to stripping civil liberties away. It's a disgusting fucking phenomenon. Our rights are our rights. Our liberties are our liberties, and they are not subject to debate for anybody's particular emergency. I don't care if it's conservatives afraid or trying to make, more to the point, conservatives trying to make you afraid of the menace of drugs or the menace of terror, both of which are legitimate menaces, let me point out. But taking the fear to the point of irrationality, to the point where you're ready to just toss away your rights, and in fact shriek at anyone who refuses to give up their rights as being an enemy of the people or a detriment to the greater good. But that was what General Ludendorff had to say about it. Here's what the German with the funny mustache had to say about it. The receptivity of the great masses is very limited. Ooh, he nailed that. Their intelligence is small, but their power of forgetting is enormous. In consequence of these facts, all effective propaganda must be limited to a very few points and must harp on these slogans until the last member of the public understands what you want him to understand by your slogans. Follow the science. The mask is there to protect you, not to protect me. Follow the science. Follow the science. Follow the science. Even when the science contradicts itself. This is when science becomes an article of faith. And science, I will be the first to say, is a dirty whore. Never in my adult life has it been more evident than right now, today, as the narrative keeps shifting and people keep following along. That quote, by the way, German with the funny mustache, Adolf Hitler, from none other than Mein Kampf. You remember his friend with the limp, his creepy little friend, the limp, Joseph Goebbels? The rank and file are more primitive than we can imagine. He's basically restating Hitler here. Propaganda must therefore always be essentially simple and repetitious. Follow the science. Follow the science. I can't be troubled to do this research. I trust the science. In the long run, only he will achieve basic results in influencing public opinion who is able to reduce problems to the simplest terms and who has the courage to keep forever repeating them in this simplified form despite the objections of intellectuals. That's the important bit with that quote. That was from Goebbels. Keep repeating them forever in this simplified form despite the objections of intellectuals. Well, Goebbels would soil himself to have the kind of power that our modern governments have with regard to propaganda, not just for the extent of media control or the reach of said media, but the fact that Goebbels at that point, when he sourced that quote, was flying in the face of intellectuals. Neil, that's another good one. He was flying in the face of intellectuals. Intellectuals saw what was going on and vehemently opposed it, as one should with authoritarianism across the board. It should be a visceral reaction from anyone, particularly intellectuals, particularly critical thinkers. You have to keep forever repeating them in this simplified form despite the objections of intellectuals. Well, imagine if little gimpy limpy Mr. Goebbels with the whacked out foot, what a creep, by the way. If Google image if you're not familiar with it, but what a creepy looking fuck. He wound up killing, he and his wife together wound up killing all of their children and then themselves outside of the Führer bunker as the Russians were closing in. If you haven't seen the movie Downfall or Das Untergang, I recommend you give it a view. It's definitely worth it. If you can handle subtitles, not everybody can. Very clever, Joey. I like that. Give it a view. I personally do not believe that Adolf Hitler died in the bunker. That's just my belief personally, and we can get into that on another program. But Goebbels and all of his kids, Goebbels and his wife killed all of their kids and then did a little murder-suicide happy dance outside the Fuhrer bunker. That's pretty much confirmed. Yep. Goebbels at the time of this quote, again, keep forever repeating them in this simplified form despite the objections of intellectuals. He was getting pushback from a lot of the German intellectual class. Imagine how happy he would be in a day like today where the entire class of intellectuals, or at least people who are regarded by society as intellectuals, completely had his back. Imagine if not only the entire intellectual class had his back, but the medical establishment had his back. Academia had his back. There were no objections. And again, it finally got around to that, as it normally does with authoritarian regimes. It starts where there's certain things you probably just shouldn't talk about because we don't want to upset anyone's delicate sensibilities. And then it pushes to the point where you have to speak up. And by that point, and of course, I won't rehash the one we all know. First, they came for the trade unionists. First, they came for Alex Jones and Milo Yiannopoulos. And I didn't speak up because I wasn't a mincing little fairy boy with an attitude, and I wasn't a tinfoil hat, loud belligerent. No job talking about people put things in the water to turn to freaking frogs gay. First, they came for Alex Jones and Milo Yiannopoulos, and he didn't speak up. It's amazing. I had somebody post on my Twitter feed earlier this week, and I think it did get posted to the Reverend Bart fan page before that got shut down behind my social media ban. Someone was asking how many people who are still doing the panic porn thing right now, how many of them legitimately believe it? And how many of them have gone so far now that they're just embarrassed and afraid to admit that they're wrong, to admit that they've been played? How transparent does it have to be? The CDC, the cult of fear, and the high priest, Dr. Fauci himself, now all come out and freely admit that the fully vaccinated can still contract COVID, can still die from COVID, and can still transmit COVID just as easily as the unvaccinated. And yet, in classic Orwellian doublethink, they are able to understand this. We have to follow the science. We have to follow St. Fauci. He is the supreme authority. Follow the science, follow the science. And now he has come out and said that, yeah, you got your stupid little Fauci ouchie tattoo and you got your double jab, you grazer fuck. But guess what? It didn't prevent you from getting the disease. It doesn't prevent you from spreading it. You can still die from it, though fully vaccinated. Again, this is all behind a virus. This entire fear campaign is behind a virus with literally a 99% plus survival rate. But people buy it. Why? Because they're told to. Why? Because they're thoroughly propagandized. Why? Because it is not about science. The same people who are talking about we can't politicize this disease are politicizing the fuck out of this disease. Because the control mechanisms being put in place by the people who are using this to their advantage serve their side. They are not the resistance. They are Goebbels. They are the ardent Nazis. They are the ardent Bolsheviks, for that matter, as long as we're talking about authoritarian regimes with much higher body counts. They are the ones true, very true, Mr. Pearson. Thank you for passing that along. Also true, Joey. Very true. They are the good Germans, and they demand that you bend the knee and become a good German. And all the while, they have convinced themselves that they are somehow the resistance, that they are somehow the good guys. That perhaps is the most terrifying effect of propaganda, particularly to come out of this issue. But here's the quote that got me banned. Out of all the quotes that I could have posted from Goebbels or even Adolf Hitler, I was told that I was being banned for, extremist content, hate group, quoting from a member of a hate group, essentially is what it came down to. I've quoted from Hitler. I've quoted from Goebbels. I've quoted from any number of high-ranking Soviet communists, high-ranking ardent Nazis. I have posted, thread after thread with those quotes. And nobody gave a damn when I was talking about the big lie, particularly when the big lie was being hung around the neck of Darth Cheeto when he was going to be the new Hitler. They don't have a problem. They never have had a problem with authoritarianism. What they have is a problem with authoritarianism where their side's not in control. This was the quote that I posted from Goebbels that got me the 30-day ban. Propaganda becomes ineffective the moment we are aware of it. And what I posted after that was basically, if you're going to quote that little weirdo on the big lie, then you should probably go ahead and quote that part that a lot of you haven't been able to get your heads around. If you're wondering why I picked up the 30-day ban, it had nothing to do with hate, had nothing to do with extremism. It had to do with pointing out the fucking obvious. Because what Goebbels said is absolutely true. Good observation, right? What Goebbels said is absolutely true. Propaganda becomes ineffective the moment we are aware of it. Now, some of us, most of you here, if not all of you, who have been following the sermon from the beginning or who have been friends of mine, because I can't see how you and I could possibly be friends if you, at this point, are unaware of the propaganda that's coming down and how it's being force-fed to you. But Goebbels had it right. Propaganda becomes ineffective the moment we are aware of it. What I haven't decided yet is whether to be terrified that so many people remain unaware of how propagandized they are. That troubles me. It does. Very, very deeply, especially OIPs, hashtag OIP, otherwise intelligent people. People whose intellects I had previously respected. I could take that tack easily. and become overwhelmed with grief at the utter loss of the capacity for critical thought. I choose, however, to take the opposite tack, because we don't do black pills around here. I choose instead to take solace in the fact that they have gotten so desperate and so transparent in the lies, in the manipulation, in the propaganda, that more and more people are becoming aware of it. It is losing its effectiveness. Don't look now, but there are protests against vaccine passports all over the fucking world. There is outright refusal in the United States by sheriff's departments in Los Angeles County to enforce mask mandates and lockdowns. Goebbels was correct. Propaganda loses its effectiveness the moment we are aware of it. And I firmly believe, by every sign that I see, that more and more people are becoming aware of it. Whether or not they're capable of admitting that publicly, for the sake of public pressure, for the fear of losing their job, for the fear of people abandoning them, for the fear of people thinking they're Trumpanistas, whatever it is that keeps people from saying, hey, man, we see it. But just like in that old little parable, that old little fairy tale that we were raised on about the emperor having no clothes, the emperor's new clothes, we all remember that. All it took was one little kid, one little 6-year-old kid, to step out of the crowd and point his finger and say out loud, the emperor is naked. And oh, how his supporters, who had previously been strapped to their seats with fear of calling out the obvious, all of a sudden it became okay to laugh. That's what we need to do. And what I'm going to encourage for all of you, and I'm really having to swallow a big ego pill on this one myself, is when you do run into people who may have bought it all the way up until this point, who may have bought it from the very beginning and are just now starting to go, wait a minute, this is kind of fucked up. Resist the urge. Resist the urge to be like, ha ha, motherfucker. Yeah, well, fuck you, dude. Yeah, fuck you. Piece of shit. Grazer fuck. Ooh, yeah, having to check myself. Yeah, we ain't got no time for you anymore, motherfucker. You bought it. Because in the time that's coming, and I don't need to elaborate, in the time that's coming, we're going to need every voice, every spine, every set of balls, and every set of hands that we can have. So resist the urge. Creepy, the original Creepy Joe, not Biden, Goebbels. Propaganda becomes ineffective the moment we are aware of it. When people become aware of it, resist the urge to hold it over their head. Grab that guy by the shoulders, pull him in, and embrace him. And step back, look him square in the eye. Hand him that little red pill and say, welcome home, motherfucker. Welcome home. We've got room at the table for you. That's how we get through this. I am the Reverend. That is the gospel. Again, cutting it a little bit short. I appreciate y'all's patience. I appreciate y'all showing up with all the difficulties and everything. Again, working on getting Casey Tellison on. He's going to be my first official guest. We're shooting for next week on that. Moses will keep posting to my page, my fan page, everything else, my personal page, my fan page, just to kind of keep y'all apprised of the situation and how all of that is going. But hopefully we'll be able to get Casey on next week. Let you hear it from the man in his own words. Again, thanks. Kind of a rough day, but we got through it. Managed to get on here and clear the conscience a little bit. If anything helped, or you want to throw me some coin, you guys already know the drill. I'm on PayPal. I'm on Facebook Pay. I'm on, you name it. Cash App, Venmo. Yeah, Dennis, I think we all are, actually. And I'll tell you about my own experience with COVID. Oh, what? Yeah, I'm going to leave you with that little cliffhanger. So yeah. In any case, if you can't afford or you don't feel like throwing me any coin, you can tell people about the program. Say, hey man, there's this fat ass old cripple that rants and raves for an hour every Sunday. You might want to check him out. He's a kindred spirit, like mind, whatever. Like and subscribe. Thank you, Joey. Yes, that would definitely help, particularly here on YouTube. For the sake of the algorithm. That fucking A word. But at the very least, man, you really want to honor me, you really want to make me smile, live by the prime directives, and we already know what they are, don't we, guys? Be the signal, not the noise. Be that light in the darkness, and be that strength in a world full of weakness. God knows we got enough weakness, we got enough noise, we got enough darkness. Be the signal, be the light, be the strength. And again, man, when these guys come out, and a lot of them are, man, a lot of them, if they contact you privately or whatever, and hey, look, man, I'm sorry, I fell for it, I'm not falling for it anymore, where do I go from here? Resist the urge to shun them. Resist the urge. Embrace them. We're going to need every sharp mind and every pair of hands we can get in the time coming forward. Appreciate you guys being here. I love you. I am the Reverend. That is the gospel. Yes. Take good care of yourselves, guys. We'll see you next Sunday. Peace.